Wealth After 50 presents Fired at 50, My Journey to Reinventing Wealth. At 50, a single phone call wiped out my 20-year career. The layoff didn't just take my job. It felt like it took my entire identity, leaving me unsure of what was next. This is the story of how I spent the next year not just looking for a new job, but finding a new version of myself. I was a software developer at a tech company I'd been with for almost 20 years. My days were a blur of code reviews, sprint planning, and fixing bugs. The office was my second home, and my colleagues were like a second family. We shared a history of product launch successes, some failures, lots of after-hour working sessions, a mix of highs and lows as we moved through years of new enhancements and projects. My career wasn't just about earning a paycheck. It gave me a sense of stability. It meant I could provide for myself, my family, plan for the future, and feel proud of the life I'd built. I thought I had it all figured out. I believed the reputation I had built, the hard work I had put in for years, would shield me from the next round of layoffs. As the years passed, I became comfortable. I suppose a false sense of security crept in until one morning. The morning started like any other. I turned on my home office computer and dialed into the network. For some reason, I wasn't able to dial in, which wasn't completely out of the ordinary, so I called the help desk. They told me others are experiencing the same issue. They are a little backed up and they would call me back. Since I had a little time, I poured myself a coffee and prepared for my day while I waited for the call back. The phone rang. I heard a familiar voice on the other end, but it wasn't the help desk. It was the director of human resources. There was no small talk. He got right to the point. He started with a line that has become the anthem of the modern workplace. As you know, we're restructuring to meet future challenges. As part of this process, your role has been eliminated. My brain just short-circuited. I could hear the HR director talking about a severance package, COBRA, outplacement services, but it was like listening to a radio underwater. 20 years of my life, the late nights, weekend work, the missed family dinners, fixing production issues, years of loyalty, were being wrapped up in a transaction that took less time than ordering a pizza. I felt this bizarre, out-of-body sensation, like I was watching a movie about somebody else. I heard myself say, "I understand," even though I understood nothing at all. I was in shock. I even told him I wish him luck today because I knew he had more hard calls to make. I closed the call in a state of numbness with a thank you. I look back now and laugh. I guess I was thanking him for laying me off. My email and network access were cut off even before the call was over. Just like that, I was an outsider. The first few days were a blur. I kept checking my phone, half expecting a call saying, "Sorry, we made a mistake." That call never came. This wasn't just about losing a paycheck. The question of who am I now just echoed in my head where my career used to be. For so long, the answer was my job. Our work is a huge part of our identity for so many of us. And when it's gone, your self-esteem can go with it. Being eliminated felt deeply personal, like a final judgment on my value as a human. Then came the grief and worry. It felt exactly like a death. And I went through all the stages. Anger at the company's coldness, hoping it wasn't real, and a sense of loss and loneliness I really didn't expect. That anxiety about what's next is a common psychological fallout from losing a job. And then there was the reality that I always knew existed, that my age would now be a factor in my job search. At 50, I wasn't just unemployed, I was unemployed and old. All those headlines about older workers getting hit the hardest in layoffs were no longer just statistics. I'd scroll through job postings and see phrases like rockstar developer or fast-paced startup culture, which all felt like code for no one over 40 need apply. Was my experience an asset, or was I just technically obsolete? Could I really compete with candidates half my age? Along with worrying about my age, the financial anxiety was a constant hum in the background. I didn't waste any time. I quickly started sending out resumes, only to learn that AI has changed the job-seeking process. Companies now use AI software that ranks resumes before a human recruiter ever even sees them. Who'd have thought my resume had to be AI battle-worthy? After 6 months, 80 job applications, and 5 interviews with no offers, I started to doubt myself. My confidence was zero. The turning point wasn't some big, dramatic epiphany. What I knew is I couldn't take another rejection. So I started working on alternatives. How about an online gig, maybe a side hustle that could become my job? Maybe this is a chance to do what I really wanted to do. And figure out who I am without the corporate title. I was so fixated on what I'd lost that I hadn't even thought about what I could gain. My identity wasn't gone. It was just buried under 20 years of corporate life. I'd been trying to find a plug-and-play replacement for my old life, but what if the goal wasn't to replace it? What if it was to build something totally new? It shifted me from grieving the past to cautiously peeking at the future. I stopped the obsessive job board scrolling. I found an old journal and wrote a question at the top of a blank page. What matters to me besides work? I realized I liked mentoring junior developers way more than I liked hitting performance metrics. I loved solving complex architectural problems, but I hated the endless meetings about meetings. I missed having time for creative projects that weren't tied to a sprint cycle. Taking the time for that kind of self-reflection is a critical first step. You have to identify your core values to figure out your next move. It was a moment of clarity. I realized that I had a choice. I could keep being the victim of my layoff, or I could become the author of my next chapter. That shift was everything. It didn't solve my problems overnight, but it gave me a new direction. It was the moment I stopped looking back and finally carefully took a first step forward. After that turning point, I knew I couldn't just jump back into the same job search. Applying from a place of desperation wasn't working, and my ego was too fragile for another round of rejections. I needed a win, any win. I had to do something that wasn't about getting my old life back, but about building a new one. My first step wasn't glamorous. I didn't enroll in a 6-month AI boot camp or launch a crypto startup. I spent $99 on a good microphone and a subscription to some video editing software. I knew my identity was a potential weakness. It's a classic stereotype, right? That older people can't learn new platforms. Instead of just worrying about it, I decided to tackle it head on. But honestly, the real reason was psychological. It was a low-stakes way to be a beginner again. It was a safe space where I could learn and even fail a little without the pressure of a job interview. This was me testing a new path, a way to rebuild my confidence with small, manageable actions. That first week was humbling. I was watching tutorials by creators half my age who were fluent in editing techniques and social media algorithms. My old identity as the expert was gone. I was a total novice. I edited and uploaded my first clumsy 1-minute video to an audience of 0. With every small success, I felt a little piece of my shattered confidence glue itself back together. I was proving to myself I could learn new things and reinvent myself. I was getting out of my head and into action. That one small action had a ripple effect. It gave me something positive to talk about. Instead of saying, I'm unemployed, I could say, I'm currently exploring content creation and building an online brand. It was the start of rewriting my own story. Crossing the threshold wasn't some heroic leap across a canyon. It was one small, deliberate step onto a new path. That $99 investment didn't get me a job. It gave me something way more valuable, a feeling of control, and the first real flicker of hope that reinvention was actually possible. The tests were constant. I'd spend a week editing a video only to see it get 12 views. I launched a t-shirt design that I thought was hilarious and sold exactly 0. Each one was a test of my resilience. The biggest enemy was the voice in my head whispering, "You're too old for this." My own internalized ageism. I had to fight back by actively rewriting my own story. But another enemy was purely practical, financial pressure. The clock was ticking. To give my new ventures room to breathe, I made a strategic decision. I started looking for a job, but not the kind of job I'd had before. I wasn't chasing a fancy title. I was looking for stability. I targeted roles where my decades of experience were an obvious asset, not a suspected liability, like product sales specialist for a mid-sized, less volatile company. It worked. I landed a role that paid the bills and valued my expertise without demanding my soul. It wasn't the pinnacle of my old career ladder, and that was the point. It was a solid foundation. This bridge job quieted the financial anxiety and gave me the mental space to be creative and take risks with my own projects. With that stability, I found my allies. I reconnected with my network, not to beg for jobs, but to ask for feedback on my videos and store ideas. People were incredibly generous. I joined online forums for new creators, sharing war stories with people in the exact same boat. That year was the slow, uncomfortable process of shedding an old skin. But with every test, I got stronger. With every ally, I felt less alone. And with every small win, the voice of that internal enemy got a little bit quieter. After a year of wandering in the wilderness, the reward I found wasn't what I expected. If you'd told me on day one that the prize wasn't landing another big corporate job, I would have laughed. But my definition of success had been completely rewritten. The ultimate reward wasn't a new job, it was a new me. The real reinvention was internal. My self-worth is no longer tied to a commit history or a performance review. It's anchored in my own resilience and my ability to build something myself. I proved that my value is mine. It isn't something a company gives me or can take away. My professional life looks completely different now. I have my stable day job, and on the side, my passion projects, this YouTube channel and the online store, have grown. The channel is finding an audience, and my online store started making consistent sales. I'm not just the software developer anymore. I'm a specialist, a creator, an entrepreneur, a mentor, a storyteller. This new chapter is about aligning my work with my life, not the other way around. The money is different too. I have my steady paycheck from my day job, plus a growing income from my own businesses. It's diversified. The growth potential now outperforms the software developer job potential. The fear that once paralyzed me is gone because I'm no longer dependent on one source that can be shut off with a 10-minute phone call. I faced the worst-case scenario. I didn't just survive. I built something better and more resilient because of it. That's the real reward, this feeling of freedom and authenticity. I'm finally living a life that reflects my own values, using my experience on my own terms. Losing my job felt like the end of the world. It turned out to be the thing that forced me to build a new one, a world that fits me so much better. My journey is my own, but those feelings, the shock, the fear, the doubt, are universal. If you're at a similar crossroads, the most important thing to know is that you're not alone, and you have more power than you think. You just have to take the first step. Maybe it's updating your LinkedIn profile, or maybe it's just opening a notebook and asking yourself, what do I actually want? Here are the biggest lessons I learned. First, let yourself grieve, but don't live there. Feel the anger, the fear, the loss. It's real. But treat it like a rest stop on a long road trip, not your final destination. Second, figure out who you are before you figure out what you'll do. Before you touch your resume, do some soul searching. What really matters to you? What makes you feel alive? Build your next chapter on that foundation, not on the ghost of your last one. Third, run small experiments. You can't think your way into a new life, you have to act your way into it. Film a 1-minute video on your phone or design a t-shirt. These small wins are how you rebuild your confidence piece by piece. And finally, the most important lesson of all, you have to rewrite your own story. You are not unemployed. You are an experienced professional with decades of wisdom. You are a seasoned problem solver. You are a resilient person gearing up for your next great act. Frame your story from a place of power, especially to yourself. The day I was fired, I thought my story was over. I see now it was just the prologue. The layoff I thought ruined my life actually gave me my life back. It forced me to stop, look inward, and build a life that's more authentic, more resilient, and more joyful than the one I left behind. Your story isn't over either. This is your chance to reinvent. And your best chapter might be the one you're about to write. And remember, it's never too late to grow your wealth after 50.